and welcome to this episode of the Autocar Professional Dialogue. We are here at the headquarters of Mercedes-Benz India, and what you can see behind me is an electric vehicle charger, and what you can see in front of me, part of it at least, is an electric vehicle. And with me, I have Mr. Martin Schwenk, MD and CEO of Mercedes-Benz India, to tell us why do we see an electric vehicle for the first time in the Mercedes-Benz India campus. So,
well, you see it for the first time. Luckily, I don't. Today we had the launch of our EQ brand. EQ is our new brand for everything electric that goes from mild hybrids to plug-in hybrids to full electric vehicles, be it fuel cells or battery electric vehicles. We launched that today, and obviously how could you launch a brand without showing what will carry the brand, because at the end it will be products and services, and these two signify here. The car is the core product, and obviously charging and charging solutions are part of the service that needs to go around that. So that's why we stand in front of this, and I'm very proud to be able to announce today that we have the brand and will soon follow with the vehicles.
And that, I believe, the commercial launch is slated for April this year.
Yes.
And globally, Mercedes-Benz expects to have about 15 to 25% of its overall sales from electric vehicles
By 2025.
By 2025. For Mercedes-Benz India, what could be the kind of scale?
For me, it's very difficult to estimate that. If you had asked me a simple question, will you introduce electric vehicles in 2020? I would have said, I don't know. And that was clearly what we thought. We looked, it depends a lot of how framework develops, how infrastructure develops, and how customer demand develops. We have seen some momentum building up last year in 2019. More interest, support from the government, push in many areas. So we thought it's the right moment to start. How that will develop right now, I cannot tell you what I will tell you 2021 at the beginning. Right. So we have an expectation that we will see some success with this vehicle, but we also see how dealers learn with that, what customer feedback will be, so how the whole deployment and the reception in the market will be. At the same time, what is framework doing? When you talk about electrification, it's also about plug-in hybrids, for example, and plug-in hybrids at the moment don't enjoy any type of support. So we all depend on the overall picture, framework, infrastructure, and at the end customer demand or customer desire, I should say, and it's very hard to predict. I think what is important to make a step and to get first-hand experience, how it works, how it can work, and then continue sharpening your plans.
Well, in terms of the well-to-wheel argument, it's still not in favor of electric mobility in India at least. So what do you expect policymakers or the government to kind of introduce or take steps which would perhaps facilitate the better adoption of mass-scale electric mobility, and also, of course, a luxury market will also gain from it?
I think the government has already done a lot, not only by talking about the need of change and electrification, but also by implementing a GST scheme, which is on pure electric vehicles quite supportive and will definitely help to develop the industry. Obviously, things like further infrastructure development is important for electrification of larger portfolios. And I already mentioned, I think it would be suitable in order to gain acceptance in a broader audience, also to be a little bit more stronger in supporting plug-in hybrids, cars that can easily do your daily commute to office and back and forth with 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 kilometers, autonomous electrically, I should say, or electrically, not autonomous, but with one charge. And then when you travel a little bit further away, you're not depending on the grid itself. So that is something I think could definitely help to also create more momentum. But on the other hand, it's also the customers. It's the dealers, and we have to see how it also needs time. I mean, it's completely new. The customers need to see the benefit they have, and it will take time. We need a portfolio which is wide enough. Daimler is globally preparing. We will have 10 models by 2022, as I mentioned, and there will successively come more models, and that's why also we feel EQ is a good idea to launch a brand, because under that umbrella we'll then branch out into a broader portfolio, and the portfolio will also be necessary. The broader the portfolio, the more you will find that customer need fulfilled. With this car I'm having today, I've fit a specific need of somebody who looks for a luxury SUV or wants to be an early adopter and driving a luxury electric vehicle. But that cannot carry the entire sales, so we'll have to look into how that develops.
Right. It's clear that OEMs in India, in various segments, are taking steps, taking action in the area of electric mobility. In fact, earlier in the day, I was attending a press conference by a leading two-wheeler OEM. And during a discussion, it also came up that apart from the acquisition cost, which obviously is higher than the IC engine vehicle, the larger concern for that set of their customers was the infrastructure. Could it just give us a sense on what is the sense or what's the kind of perception when it comes to the luxury car market in terms of the acceptance or the potential of electric vehicles?
I mean, this is really something we still need to work with. What we know is that many of our customers will have a possibility to set up a wall box in their home, in their office, in their work environment, and that will help them with a car which is ours, which can under testing cycle do up to 470 kilometers. Obviously, in real life, that will be maybe 350, 380. I don't know. It really depends. But it still gives them quite some electric autonomy, so to say, to drive with, and that gives them certainly some peace of mind. And then I think we'll be able to set up infrastructure. I think that's maybe different if you come to different markets. Not everyone has the luxury of having a parking spot at their disposition, and quite frankly, some of our customers also have other cars that they can use if they want to drive a longer distance. They have another. Many of them have other Mercedes cars or from other brands, which they can use at least as a mental backup, and that I'm not sure that is available for everyone in every segment. But I think one criteria is there: you have to set up infrastructure at the customer's place. You have to help them where they commute. That there is something we need on a public scale. Something if we want broad adoption, we need broader deployment of infrastructure. For us, for a start, I don't think it is too much of a hindrance that we cannot overcome with the solutions.
So you'll also provide the wall box, the charging box.
We'll create at least an opportunity or way how to deal with that. I mean, I cannot just put a car and say, now look how you charge it. I mean, with a wall box you have at least a reasonable charging speed over a couple of hours. But then the question is obviously for full functionality in the country we need fast chargers then, and this is certainly something that cannot be done at many customers' homes, or it will also be a question then how the electricity grid will actually be able to deal with that. So that's becoming then, I think, a bigger infrastructure questions than the one we try to resolve here. Yeah?
Would you look at partnerships then with, say, EV charging infrastructure companies? And in terms of skilling for your network, sales network, I assume that this will be perhaps at least in the initial stage, would be available only through select dealers, right?
I mean, of course, our rollout is planned in a measured way. We will go progressively in, and we'll start with more the metro areas we look into, and we'll also qualify first sales and after sales personnel in that area first. So that makes sense to us to I mean, it's a learning. I mean, it is complicated, it's new, it's complex. There is high voltage batteries involved, which need a completely different treatment. Yeah, a lot of safety questions, transport, logistics, all of that needs to be clear, and that's something what we're working on, and that's also part of the reason why we give ourselves from the launch of the brand to the actual launch of the vehicle some 3 months to really be clear on this on these parameters. In terms of infrastructure, I can frankly say we as a luxury manufacturer, we don't have the footprint to be able to push infrastructure across India development. That would be a completely different business model, and so far we're not in the business of selling electricity or selling wall boxes or selling, I would say, infrastructure for that. So our focus will remain on the end user and his direct interaction with cars, wallboxes, the closer environment to create some peace of mind. But I don't develop the aspiration now that we are the ones who it's just sheer size. We are not. We don't have the size to do something. Maybe some bigger manufacturers can look into that. For us, we don't think that makes sense at this point.
That's where the opportunity for a partnership arises, right?
That's true, but again, I think, and you mentioned that yourself, I think for a start, we are well set because we have long-range electric vehicles will support the customer in their...
So at least for the start, your own infrastructure you have to provide
we basically
will be good
covered,
enough.
I think.
Yeah,
and that, But again, as a year ago, we didn't know what we're doing. We also cannot be sure what a year from now would be helpful and necessary. So I think we will continue with our team to really closely monitor what needs to happen to further deploy and develop the electric car, further push the sales of our vehicles. And there will be a lot of learning that all of us will have in the next couple of months and years.
So, Martin, when did you finalize the plan to introduce the EQ brand in India?
Let me say it was in the second half of last year. Yeah, so we started discussing, say, earlier in the year, and then we came closer to that in the second half of the year. You know, at the end, a lot of framework changed. Yeah, we saw interest in the audience, being the customers growing, and then obviously, quite frankly, to have an opportunity to launch a brand at the beginning of a decade for Mercedes-Benz here in India as our first start, our first activity. I mean, in 2020, it would almost have been stupid for me not to use that opportunity.
And you have EQA at the entry level end, and then you have EQS as a concept, at least as of now. So at a later stage, would you look at having the entire spectrum here?
I mean, there will be something across the entire lineup, yeah, and that's the beauty for me. On the global levels, a lot of these products are being developed, prepared, or already ready for deployment. And for us, then the decision what we do is a lot of driven by what the market needs. I mean, that's, as I said, the beauty. We see it building up, and that also, if you think to decide a brand launch in the second half of the year, to do it a few months later, that's only possible because we can basically tap into the global resources. There's the brand there, that's the cars there, and we will continue to do so. We will look into what India needs, what we think will make us successful in India, what our customers will want, and then based on that, we'll take the decisions. And I think what will really help us by then, we might have other cars. We will for sure have other cars, and we will complete over the years the lineup here in India. I'm very confident about that, with many more exciting models of the EQ brand.
While that roadmap is not clear yet, but you said you're very clear when it comes to the conventional IC engine vehicle business. You also unveiled the theme for this year. Yes. For tomorrow,
yes.
With 10 models. This year, how is the market looking like? Because last year, as of 2019, you had a very good Q4, very strong Q4, year-on-year growth over the Q4 of 2018. But at the annual level, yearly the sales, it's still down. But you also increased your market share in the luxury car segment, you see. But that is growing at someone else's expense. The market is still not growing. This year, how does it look like? When do you see a market turnaround, so to speak?
It's very hard to say, but I think some uncertainties will go out of the market now going forward. I mean, still there will be some irritation or turbulence with the move over from BS4 to BS6. But I also see that a lot of players in the industry have taken steps to make sure that it becomes not a disruption. Yeah? So I think we're heading for a change over which is manageable, yeah, and that should help the overall industry. And I would then expect, latest by mid-year, the overall it has calmed down, at least. Pull ahead of purchases or whatever that will help. And then I think a big motor will be new models coming. There will be new models from entire industry, but I am proud to say we'll bring 10 new vehicles in at least 10. I'm actually aiming for every month a car to bring that. 28th of January we come with the GLE, and I mean we have all these cars, beautiful new cars lined up. A lot of SUVs in our entry segment, in the NGC segment, we'll see quite some movement later in the year. So that gives me a lot of optimism that the momentum we have seen in the last 3, 4, 5 months, that we have an opportunity to carry that forward and see by end of next year numbers which are definitely higher than what we had end of 2019.
Right. So your focus will also be a strong focus on the entry level in your portfolio as well.
We will work on the entire portfolio. We'll see a lot of SUVs, but also in the NGC segment, we'll do something, and that will help us really to set a very good foundation for going forward. So. I mean, really a restless year. Restless for tomorrow is our motto for this year, and we're really restless to get all this rolled out, getting moving now into the right direction in 2020, because that sets a lot of the tone also for the future, for 21 and onwards. And I mean, I invite you come to the Auto Expo in Delhi. You will see some glimpse of what's coming, and I'm sure you will also like what you see there. So that is really, I'm very positive about what's coming in the next, actually not only few months, but going further in.
On that note, Martin, thank you very much, and wish you all the best for 2020.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
There you are, Martin Schwenk, Managing Director and CEO of Mercedes-Benz India, sharing with us about the strategy for the electric mobility space for the OEM, for the company in India, as well as how the company led by him is very restless for further growth in a very challenging environment. And while he has mentioned that 10 models at least, in his words, this year, perhaps he would like to do a dozen new models in the ICE engine vehicle space. So let's see how the market turns around. As he says, by mid-year or so, it should plateau, it should become stable or so, right?
Let's see.
Yeah, and so that's how Mercedes-Benz India is really strategizing to keep its leadership position intact, and we will keep tracking that story on Autocar Professional. And thank you very much for watching this interview. Goodbye.